The Switch 2 has been out for about a couple of months now, and it's been pretty much exactly what everyone expected. It's the Switch 1, but bigger. Although what wasn't expected was the massive amount of controversy Nintendo would create for themselves. This ranged from the Switch 2's horrendous pricing to petty lawsuits against small indie devs. But before we get to all that, let's start from the beginning. Today I'd like to talk about how I grew up with Nintendo, my experience with the original Switch, and why I think that the Switch 2 can never live up to it. Picture this. It's 2015 and Nintendo is left completely in shambles. The Wii U was a horrible disaster, while the only thing keeping the company afloat was really just the 3DS. They knew they had to do something, and fast. Wii U development was quickly halted, and they put everything on the line preparing for their new console that would hopefully save the company. A year later, and it's now 2016, and the Nintendo Switch was officially unveiled in a surprise reveal trailer. The trailer itself was packed with tons of sneak peeks of games and features that were not yet fully announced. Yet most importantly, they showed off the console's new, unique hybrid design, and there was really just nothing like it at the time. It was a portable handheld with the performance of a home console that you could switch from at any given time. And the best part is that it was only a few months away from release. Eventually, after 6 long months of waiting, the Nintendo Switch was finally here. And everyone went crazy. Stores were sold out everywhere. You couldn't get your hands on a Nintendo Switch for months, even if you tried. I myself got pretty lucky for only getting it 2 months after its release. And let me tell you, I'll never forget it. The day I finally bought it, I couldn't wait to get home to play the new Zelda Breath of the Wild that I had bought with it. And when I did, I set it up, turned it on, and sat down to lose myself in this new experience. It felt like a spiritual awakening. I'm not even being dramatic here. Breath of the Wild was probably the perfect game to pair with the Switch. It really showed how the Switch could handle more graphically intensive games and still make them look pretty good. To this day, it's one of my favorite games of all time, and it's very close to my heart. One of the strongest aspects of the original Switch was probably its games. In its first year alone, it had Zelda, Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 2, Xenoblade 2, all of which are considered pretty amazing games. They continued its initial success year after year with more great games, which eventually made the Switch one of the best-selling gaming consoles of all time. But that wasn't all good. Now, if you were paying attention at the time, during the beginning of the Switch, we saw glimpses of Nintendo's greed. First, it started with announcements of paid DLCs for unreleased games. Then, they started to force a paid online subscription for a bare-bones online service that barely worked. And after that, they released a bunch of old Wii U games for way more that they were worth. Also, they decided to sue the developers of Pal World, which is a Pokemon-like RPG, because it was too similar to whatever trashy-ass game that Pokemon was churning out. The worst part is that people just ate it up. There was hardly any backlash for any of this. Most people bought all those re-releases and gave Nintendo every penny that they had. All it did was make Nintendo confident in extorting their fans. Now don't get me wrong, the Switch was truly amazing and possibly one of my favorite consoles ever, but its success is eventually what led to the mess that would become the Switch 2. Later on in its life, it became pretty clear that Nintendo was beginning to slow down on Switch development, since there was hardly any new major announcements for any games. This partly was due to just how old the hardware was getting. It simply couldn't run anything new anymore. Everyone knew that the Switch 2 was coming. There was speculation for a long time, with a few leaks here and there, but there was no real way of verifying any of it. It was just all speculation until companies that worked with Nintendo straight up leaked the console before Nintendo even had the chance. These leaks were pretty crazy. It showed exact dimensions of the console and controllers. Despite all the leaks, the Switch 2 was officially revealed on January of 2025 in a reveal trailer that felt rushed, lackluster, and uninspired. In it, they officially showed off the console's design, which we already saw due to the leaks, and they teased the one new game, that being Mario Kart World. I remember watching it and being like, seriously? That's it? Which is basically everyone else's reaction. There was no actual surprise apart from Mario Kart. There was no real look into the Switch 2's features or hardware or anything. Now compare that to the Switch 1's iconic reveal trailer. It's just flat out disappointing. We didn't know it yet, but they were saving most of the details for an upcoming Nintendo Direct where they would go into further detail on what the console was all about. This Direct was still pretty disappointing. For the console, they really just focused on the game chat features that just look like Discord in 360p resolution. It's cool that they finally added something like this, but it's embarrassing that it took so long since their competitors have already been doing voice chat for at least 20 years at this point. Needless to say, there was a lot of controversy surrounding this console. Nintendo announced that their big first-party games will now be raised up to $80 instead of the already overpriced $70. Also, the console itself will now cost $450, which is more than a Steam Deck, by the way. Oh, but it's a portable PC, not a game console. Man, shut up! And to add the cherry on top, they updated their terms of service to allow them to brick, not ban, your console if they detect any modifications whatsoever. Even if you don't do anything at all, they'll still ban you. The internet was in a complete uproar, with two different sides battling each other over who's right. There were people calling to boycott Nintendo and not to buy a Switch 2, and then there were Nintendo fanboys that thought Nintendo was the second coming of Jesus, so they could do nothing wrong. Yet, this all came to a halt when the console finally released on June 5th of 2025. Unsurprisingly, it was a smash success. Most stores couldn't keep up with the demand, so they already sold out quickly, almost mirroring the initial success of the Switch 1. In fact, it became the fastest selling video game console in history. It was a success, and most of the people that called to boycott the console would eventually buy one themselves, being the hypocrites that they are. Shortly after the release of the Switch 2, there would already be some drama for the new console. The launch title, Mario Kart World, did not seem to live up to fan expectations. To some, it felt like the game was unfinished and almost underbaked. It lacked some core game modes and features that previous games have already had for years at this point. Some people that bought it as a part of the Switch 2 bundle thought it was barely worth the $50 that they paid for, let alone the $80 at its full price. It's already been about half a year since the release of the Switch 2, and we're already seeing the cracks in the wall. Each announcement and game release has been a double-edged sword. Most games seem to come with some sort of asterisk attached to it, like how Donkey Kong Bonanza was a great game, but then it had a $20 paid DLC that felt like it was just a free update. Each subsequent Nintendo Direct didn't really help the situation. It seemed like Nintendo's greed was completely inescapable. Every announcement had some sort of downside, with almost no exceptions. No matter what game you love, Nintendo somehow did something to try and squeeze every penny out of you for it. I believe that people now are getting more fed up than ever. In the latest directs, the comment sections have been filled with people calling out Nintendo on whatever scam they're trying to pull. which is honestly a good thing. It just means people are waking up. Yet, with all this being said, the Switch 2 is still continuing to sell surprisingly well. People decided that they're okay with everything Nintendo's doing. Most people just want the shiny new hardware with better performance, and they're willing to sacrifice some level of integrity if it means that they get to play Minecraft in 60 FPS. And all power to them, I guess. The Switch to me feels like the last time Nintendo will innovate with their consoles. It was a great idea at the time, and the Switch 2 is just a better iteration. But now, Nintendo won't feel a need to innovate. They can stick to whatever is guaranteed to sell and know that the fans will buy it all up. I think it's very telling that the launch title for the Switch 2 was Mario Kart World, a game that will sell tons of copies even if it's terrible. Now compare that to the launch title of the original Switch, being Zelda Breath of the Wild, one of the best video games of all time, and you can really tell the difference. Sure, Zelda was a widely known franchise, but it wasn't a system seller like Mario Kart. Nintendo has been a part of my life for a really long time. For as long as I can remember, I would always have some sort of console that I could play a silly Mario game that I liked. These consoles, like the DS, Wii, 3DS, were so memorable to me, not just for their games, but for their creativity. Nintendo was always just another greedy company, and there's no real way of getting around that. But back then, they at least cared about what they did. They tried to innovate in order to offer new experiences for fans, and that's really what set them apart. Instead of being in the console race for raw power, they offered different ways to have fun, trying to change up the formula each and every time. Sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't. That Nintendo is far gone. The days when Nintendo set themselves apart are over. The Switch 2 is just another handheld console like the Switch 1, but without anything that made the original so charming and special. The Switch 2 won't ever be the same as the Switch 1. It just can never live up to it. It's sad to admit it, but I don't think I'll ever have that feeling of when I first got my Switch with any other console. That feeling of opening a brand new console, playing Breath of the Wild, and staying up all night playing on it. That feeling of excitement and intrigue just won't be there anymore. And for that reason, I don't think I'll be picking up a Switch 2 anytime soon.